You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in.
So you're a fellow Mainer, I understand.
I am.
Are we all from the same area?
Well, I'm from Glenburn, but
Feel the burn, dude.
So yeah, I grew up on Pushaw Lake in Lucky Landing. So I always say, like I literally walked uphill on a dirt road 1 mile in each direction in sub-zero weather to catch the bus and go to school. And no one believes me. They're like, isn't that your grandfather's story? I'm like, no, it's actually mine.
Oh, that's amazing. Welcome back, everyone, to Remotely We Are One. I am your host, Rick, joined by the wise Kaleem Clarkson. Hey, bud.
Bonjour, monsieur.
It's like, oh, how do I respond to that? He called me wise, but I don't know if that's...
I was thinking the same thing. Wise.
Yeah, I was confused with the wise thing because I didn't know if, all in my mind I could just think of that drink, the Three Wise Men, but that's probably not smart.
Oh, I don't know why you had to bring that up. I was feeling good today, man.
What is that drink again?
It's Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, and it's a shot. Oh, I can't remember what the third one is.
Basically, it's the blackout drink.
Jose Cuervo, I think. Is the third one.
I mean, I used to like that back in my day.
It's like stupidity in a shot glass. I mean, why would you want to do that?
Right.
Unless it's your 21st birthday. Right?
That's your unwise.
Right. Yes, unless you're unwise. Hey, listeners, viewers, I want you to comment and I want you to say how many Three Wise Men have you had in your lifetime? I've probably had about 5.
I don't even want to, I can't even go there. I'm too old. So anyway, back to the story here. We have a phenomenal episode lined up. I'm really excited. I feel like we're kind of getting back to our roots a little bit with the conversation we're about to have. Don't you a little bit, Kaleem?
Oh, yes, Bob. We're getting right back to our roots, right up there in the 207. Right up there in the 207. That's Maine. Yeah.
Reckon.
What I love about this episode, too, is that, in all seriousness, she's awesome. We've met before, and then the day, I was like, by the way, I'm from Maine. She's like, no way. And she lived right by us. We're going to get to that. But, the other piece that's really cool is that our guest today, she's an Army veteran. So thank you for your service. Thank you very much. Keeping us safe. Allowing us to drink Three Wise Men's on the beach. So I appreciate that. She used to work for the U.S. Department of Labor, which I think is quite impressive. Here it is. I think that this is the big one for me. It just hits home. She created an award-winning telework program for the Department of Agriculture in 2010, bro. 2010. How many people work there? It's a lot.
At the time, it was 105,000 people in 3,000 different locations in this country and around the globe, if you can imagine.
Take that, people. Remote work's been happening for a minute. 2010, she developed this program for the United States government. All right. She works with flex jobs on the employer side. She had to reschedule this interview multiple times, but the last time she had to reschedule it because she had to attend this thing. It's this little thing. It was a congressional hearing on the future of remote work. So we'll give her a pass, Rick. What do you think? We'll give her a pass for, actually talking to Congress about remote work?
Well, whatever. Yeah, sure, I guess so. We'll get on with it.
Yeah.
Like I said, she is from my home state of Maine. She's shout out to Glenburn, not Bangor. Just do not confuse Glenburn with Bangor.
It's just a little bit better, but don't hate.
It does have Pushaw Lake in all seriousness. It's beautiful out there. Love it, love it, love it. She's on the Maine Advisory Council on remote work. I got to get on that. Get me on that.
I know, you got to get in. You got to get in. It's a great initiative.
Last but not least, she's a workforce transformation strategist. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Miss Mika Cross, a round of applause.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome to the show, Mika.
I want to give y'all a round of applause. My goodness. And how cool is this? We're all from Maine. Represent.
Yeah, from the same area.
I mean, you might have to come back on as like a guest host. I mean,
seriously,
we could be the three Mainiacs.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Well, first of all, Mika, I'm so excited to meet you, not just because you're from Maine, but you have a plethora of experience, and I'm so excited to dig into. But before we get to any of that, can you just tell us briefly what your initial experiences were with remote work?
Oh my goodness. I am kind of old school, so I have to dig way back when. But you know what's interesting? Kaleem mentioned that I was in the Army, right? I actually served as an enlisted soldier and a commissioned officer, go figure. So jack of all trades, right? And so my first duty station as an officer, I was working with the boys in Fort Stewart, Georgia, and I was a personnel officer. So I also had to run things like the Cup and Flower Fund, which required me to get out of the office, thank God, and do bank deposits, pick up trophies, awards, things like that. And so I started realizing the value of what it meant for my own ability to focus and get things done if I just took those little kinds of, I call them mobile breaks, really, it was at the time. So I was still working, right? But I wasn't in the necessarily official office. And then fast forward to the tragedies of 9/11, and I received orders to, actually, it was an assignment way above my pay grade, go figure, but everyone was deploying and going all over the place, trying to fill in the blanks during that time. And I got stationed in Washington, D.C. in the United States Intelligence Community with a top secret clearance. So I was leading the military executive office of personnel there, which is really a joint duty assignment. And part of that was to help with updating policies and resources for the intelligence community, which did include civilians and all military. And I remember they would ask for volunteers to update certain policies. And one of them at the time was FlexiPlays. That's what we used to call telework. And this was like way back, even well before the 2000s. And so, well, no, I'm sorry. It was around 2002, early 2000s. And so I started realizing the benefit of what it meant for a workforce who was trying to attract and retain and engage and motivate people that were asked to do, you know, I want to say that the utmost of sacrifices. And that includes, again, people in uniform, people out of uniform, people that held the highest level of security clearances for this nation. And when they were able to be supported at work, what that would mean to our nation's security and positions of national security first and foremost. So that's kind of where I got my taste of it. And I also was able to participate in those kinds of programs way back then too. So once I did that, I kind of became an advocate, you know how that goes.
Before you follow up, so are there aliens then?
That I cannot confirm or deny.
Kaleem's asking the important questions.
It's super important.
I heard the CIA.
I'll
get a lot of calls on it. I did work for a 3IA agency, you know.
But do the aliens prefer remote work?
I think they do. Yeah, hands down.
Probably.
I would hope so.
And they were already they were like the first mobile workers too, you know.
Of course they were. Traveling at the speed of light.
If you're just tuning in now, Mika used to work for Agent Scully and Agent Mulder. Okay? On the X-Files.
I love Mulder. Yeah.
I do too.
Just to follow up a little bit, since we're talking about the government, you had mentioned before we kicked things off that less than 7% of government employees are under the age of 30, and a third of the workforce is retirement eligible. Can you talk a little bit more about why teleworking is such a priority right now?
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. Actually, it's super important. Obviously, as Kaleem mentioned, I had to reschedule a couple of times because of this huge hearing that I was called to testify in. And I want to start this answer by just reminding people that, you know, as you alluded to, telework is not new. Some of the definitions have sort of morphed and evolved over time, but this nation's largest employer, the federal government, has been teleworking in some form or fashion, even as early as the 1930s, if you can believe that. And so well before there was legislation and mandates and policies that kind of officiated this kind of working as a component of what they call in the government alternate work schedules, people were kind of figuring it out. There was a rocket scientist in the 1950s who worked for NASA and would telework from LA and then come back to DC. And then there were iterations.
Oh, Jack Nillis.
Yeah.
I just added him on LinkedIn yesterday.
Okay.
I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said yes. I can't believe you said yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, but so then it goes back to like, this is not rocket science.
Right.
But yet we've been trying to figure it out. And why on earth is it so slow moving? You can call it whatever you want. It's been called telecommuting. It's been called mobile work. It's been called telework. It's been called flexi place. Now it's hybrid and remote and name it what you will, it's work at the end of the day. But the biggest challenge that the government on the federal side anyway has been contending with, the biggest barrier overall is around management resistance. So it's the people piece, right? It's the people piece. I'm trying to figure out, how do you manage workers when you can't see them? We all know that old antiquated style of managing performance by butts and seats just clearly is inept anyway. And so if you're trying to replicate that in a remote or hybrid environment, it just ain't going to work. So it's critical mass right now. You got tech positions that the federal government's trying to solve for, big, huge, hairy challenges, trying to bring the best and the brightest into the government. How are you going to do that? Again, the issue of having such a heavy imbalance of remote eligible or retirement eligible, rather, folks that could, if they wanted to, retire today or tomorrow. And we don't have a middle to pluck from. So this is a real issue. And I think it's around more than just telework and remote work. It's really around, how are you going to create a workplace experience that kind of brands the federal government back as a good place to work overall.
So when you talk about less than 7% of government employees are under the age of 30, obviously there's multiple strategies as to attracting younger talent, bringing people in, internships I heard, and other types of programs. But is telework a main priority of the government to attract talent? Is that why you actually had to testify, Ms. Cross?
Yes, sir. It is. You mentioned the USDA. Back in 2010, when I worked there, we were implementing the requirements of a new law at the time that was being passed under the Obama administration, which was the Telework Enhancement Act, that really sort of formalized mandates for federal agencies to determine those who were eligible and those who weren't, set participation goals and incorporate it into their strategic planning efforts, make it a component of continuity of government, continuity of operations, required training, things of that nature. And there was like really great momentum between 2010 and 2013-ish. But then you kind of see this flattened curve. So it's not really a curve, it's flat. And agencies were backtracking on how they defined who's eligible to participate and who's not. And then the percentages of those who were eligible and actually able to participate on a regular or recurring basis started dwindling. And so it's time after the pandemic, and now they realize that to keep up the pace with the government's largest competitors, which are private industry companies that can offer all sorts of flexibilities, including remote and hybrid and telework, they really need to get hot on these kinds of initiatives. So I think they're reinvigorating the way that they mandate and oversee telework and remote programs for the government. And they're trying to figure it out right now. How are you going to continue to sustain the momentum? Because almost 60% of the federal workforce was working on a daily basis in a remote fashion during the height of the pandemic. So you can't say you can't do it.
Right.
Because you did it. And those indicators of things that maybe didn't work so well are areas where you can improve performance management and workflow efficiencies through technology and through people. It's not really a result of location. It's a result of inefficient work processes.
So for many out there working in government, whether it's local, state, I know you're talking a lot about federal, but whether it's local, state, or federal, back in the day, it was not back in the day, but even today, people enjoy those jobs because of stability, definitely a stable job, great benefits generally. But within government, just like any large enterprise, there's so many different, facets and beliefs and leadership styles. In one agency might be fully remote. Like what's that? The patent association or the patent division. They were fully, trademark. They were like fully remote a long time ago. And then you have different departments that didn't believe that for whatever reason. What advice would you give to people that are currently working for the government, whether that's universities too? A lot of people forget about universities are state governments if it's a state university. What advice would you give people who are currently working in government, but they just don't have that flexibility just because their supervisor or their director or whatever just doesn't really believe in it? What type of advice would you give them?
Well, I think not just their supervisor and leadership doesn't believe in it, but also, as I mentioned, only about 60% of the workforce was working that way in the federal government anyway. And so clearly there are many positions that are not suitable for everyday, all day kinds of remote work, right? So my advice is to look for employers that offer a choice in all kinds of flexibilities. And that sort of meets workers where they're at. I firmly believe in the government surveys of employees year after year after year, hands down, show that the federal workforce is committed to the mission first. They care very deeply about the work they do on behalf of the American taxpayer, but they also want choices. And in a day and age where we have 5 generations of workers with 5 different preferences of how, when, and where you work to get the job done, employers of any kind and any level of government really need to extend the full suite and the full range of flexibilities in order to give option. And I think at the end of the day, what you're seeing in those research studies too in private industry right now is that there's not, again, a one size fits all. Not everyone wants to work 100% remotely, and not everyone can. So for those positions that may not be eligible for a fully remote position, offering them the opportunity to have a compressed work schedule, alternate scheduling hours, maybe it's a part-time arrangement at times that meets workers where they are and what they need for their life so they can bring their best to work. And there are ways for workers to look for those kinds of government employers. Mm-hmm. So for instance, there is a best places to work in the federal government, I'm talking Fed now, report that's typically published annually by the Partnership for Public Service. And you can see who of the large agencies, mid-size agencies, and small-size agencies have the best culture according to employee perception. The interesting thing, Kaleem, is you'll also see a strong correlation between higher levels of telework and workplace flexibilities and overall global satisfaction and engagement. And that's how they're ranked based on the best places to work. So there are easy ways to kind of hack the system and look. And of course, you got to work your network and find out, hey, should I go work for GSA? Should I go work for USDA? What's it really like? Asking the people and trying to figure that out.
So do your own recon.
Mm-hmm. Huh? Exactly.
You like that?
I love it. It's perfect Army term. It makes a lot of sense. And Flex Jobs has a great list of government employers who offer either telework or fully remote. And I am loving what I'm seeing right now. NASA's hiring for senior level executives remotely. I'm seeing VA do that. We're seeing the Army do that, and the Navy. Go Army. So it's a really exciting time. There's a lot of opportunities and a lot of options that are being extended that haven't been really fully leveraged prior to the pandemic.
Wow. Let me dive into something a little bit here. You mentioned earlier about workforce transformation strategist. Can you tell me exactly what it is that a workforce transformation strategist does?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I can really pinpoint it because it changes all the time. See? Mm-hmm. And so what I like to describe it as is the intersection of people first, policy, performance, and progress. And that kind of changes based on the landscape.
Is that the 4 Ps or the 3 Ps? I missed it.
I threw in a 4.
Okay. Nice. I like that. Can you say that again just so it sucks into my brain?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the intersection of people, policy, performance, and progress.
Love it so much. I'm definitely stealing that, Mika. So
yeah, you go right ahead.
I'll give you credit when I do reuse. That's what I love about this show, learning so much. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and that's actually a position that I sort of coined when I was working at the Office of Personnel Management, which is the federal government's HR agency. And really what it means is it helps employers think about how do you iterate with change management strategies, effective communication, the right policies and the right mixture of that. And then how do you set a team or an organization up for success by managing by results and managing the performance of individuals and teams in a more effective way too.
That's exactly what we do. So I really like that. I like that a lot.
So what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that leaders are having with workplace flexibility right now?
Well, that's not a loaded question, my friend, but
Why don't you just load it up, dude? You're just loading it right up, gay.
Yeah.
Come on.
If I were to pinpoint one thing, it goes back to what we're seeing in the government, which is like that management resistance piece. It's like trying to figure out how you're going to do this when different workers want different things and different positions require different things of the people who want those different things. So it becomes a little bit scary. People feel nervous. I'm talking about the supervisory manager level when they can't equitably allow the same level of flexibility to Kaleem as they can to Mika. And they're concerned that, Mika as a disabled Army veteran female might file a complaint or something because Kaleem gets to work fully remotely, but not Mika. So I think those are real legitimate issues that employers are contending with. Again, I think people are stuck in thinking about going back to the way that we were operating before.
Yes.
And honestly, it really heartening in some ways because while there were good things about the way we used to do things, this is such a great opportunity for us to re-envision and reimagine what work can be and how we can humanize the workplace, no matter where the workplace is, whether it's digital headquarters, whether it's a mix of on-prem, on-site, or wherever it may be in our home state of Maine. So I think the one biggest thing is the culture and people piece. It's that management resistance. And I think employers need to do a better job of empowering managers in how to make the right kinds of intelligent decisions.
Giving them the ability to make the calls versus sending out a blanket policy for everyone, especially as you become a larger group. The government, it's really difficult to draft a policy for everyone. I have a kind of another government question. I know you were involved with this a little bit. And shout out to all the small towns out there. This country, we have all these big cities, and I love the big city. I'm in Atlanta, but there's just so many more small towns and so many rural areas, and we're from a rural area. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about like remote work? And I understand that you're in the DC area a lot because you work with the government, but you also make it home.
I do.
Quite frequently. So what are your thoughts about this idea of state governments using telework as an economic development model as far as attracting people to move to Maine? I know Maine's seen a little bit of an increase, actually, of people moving there. Can you talk a little bit about that piece, economic development and telework?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for areas like Maine, our hometown, it also can reverse the rural brain drain that was occurring in so many different rural metropolitan areas and rural areas all over the country, really, where people would get educated in hometown USA.
Yes.
To go where the jobs are, right? Mm-hmm, and so if you consider what it can mean to like even recovery efforts after the pandemic, building back jobs and better jobs, and also expanding the tax base on rural communities and localities by attracting and retaining maybe high earners, maybe federal workers, maybe whoever, to come back to a really great place to work, a really wonderful community, but that otherwise wouldn't have had those opportunities for working America to live and work in, it can pay dividends. And what we've seen over the past 5 years, even pre-pandemic, is that you have areas like New Hampshire and Vermont who are thinking about even incentivizing remote workers to come relocate there by paying them a stipend. Oklahoma has one, and many other states are looking at that. But as we're looking at the landscape post-pandemic, I think that state and localities won't even really have to do that anymore if employers are willing to bring their jobs and allow their workers to relocate where they want. Because there are already such great incentives, right? Lower cost of living in many areas, even a better quality of life in some cases. Depends what you like, right? Like you're a city guy, you like it. I even live an hour outside of DC because I love the hometown, small town feel. So I live on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland with less than 5,000 people here. It's kind of very much like Maine, but at the same time, I can get to the city in an hour. So again, back to those choices. You give people more choices. You give communities choices. Think about the growth and rebuilding pieces of it. And even there's a equity piece also where employers are trying to cast the net wide in their talent pools and attract and retain workers that otherwise maybe they couldn't have tapped, that otherwise couldn't have relocated due to financial or family constraints. And now the entire country becomes your recruitment pool.
Yeah. We talk a lot about small towns being able to now attract a more diverse talent pool. It's really hard to have a diverse workforce in a state that's 94% white, Maine. Mm-hmm. So it's much easier once your talent pools is more open,
100%.
So Mika, you've been in this industry a long time. I have no doubt that you've seen some stuff along the way. Can you share with us maybe something that might stick out in your memory as memorable, whether it was something funny or inspiring or something that you'll never forget from all of your experiences working remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm just going to keep it real and focused on a personal experience, because not only was I building these programs and policies for the employers that I worked with to benefit the workforce, right? But I also needed to benefit from it. So after I got out of the Army, I went through a pretty harsh divorce. I was pregnant with my son at the time, didn't have family in this area because all my family's in Maine or New York, and I was in the DC area. After I was looking at career opportunities outside of the intelligence community, I actually had a job offer in what I call paradise. No, it was in Hawaii. The job would have relocated me and my two kids, bought me out of my house. Thank God. I think it was a $60,000 pay raise at the time. And I was excited to go just because I really wanted to get away from my ex-husband. But I got to tell you, at the same time I was interviewing and accepted that position, I was looking forward to it. It was with the intelligence community, just a different agency. I had a colleague that kept calling me all the time from USDA and kept saying, hey, you got to come look at the Department of Agriculture. There's this amazing opportunity. You're going to love it. You're a perfect fit for it. And I'm thinking, what do these farmers want from me? Why do they keep calling? I'm just kidding. Again, from rural Maine, so we can talk about that. But I worked in the intelligence community with a top secret clearance. I was going to paradise, Hawaii. So I did my friend a solid. I said, look, I'll come interview, but I already accepted this job. I don't really know if I'm going to be open to coming anywhere else. I just wanted to be nice. I go in, I'm on my way to Maine, by the way, Kaleem. So my Honda Pilot is packed to the brim because after that, I was going to go pick up my kids and drive the next 7 hours all the way up to Maine by myself, because that's how I roll. Mm-hmm, jump out of the car, go in. I'm thinking it'll be 30 minutes. And I sit down and have this most amazing interview with the Chief Human Capital Officer, the Deputy Chief Human Capital Officer, and the Director of Diversity and Inclusion. This was in 2010 for the entire USDA. And they're saying, we need a visionary to come and build a work life and wellness portfolio. And I said, okay, well, I've already accepted this job. I mean, it sounds nice, but and then they said,
Hawaii.
Yeah, I got a job in Hawaii, and they said, we don't care when you work or where you work. We need somebody to create these policies and make this the best place to work. And I said, wait a minute.
Break the moment here. Yeah.
I mean, because in 2010, that was kind of unheard of, right? They're like, definitely. We trust you. We heard about, because I wrote policies in the intelligence community. I just couldn't talk about them at the time as much. And so I just was like, okay, well, tell me more. So they start describing this vision of the Secretary of Agriculture, and it was called cultural transformation, and telework and wellness programs and workplace flexibilities. They were just one component of it. But it was like this vision of how you were going to transform a culture for 105,000 people around the globe. In many cases in rural America, where you and I come from, right? Mm-hmm. Serving America, protecting the nation's food supply, making sure that farmers had the right kinds of assistance and loans and support and all of these really important things, SNAP benefits for children and families who, might traditionally not have access to nutritional food. And so I was thinking, but I said yes to Hawaii, that's paradise. And I could not escape the fact that it was calling my name. And when they described the vision of what just the telework program or the wellness program could mean for this workforce, And then also they said, and you can work anywhere, anytime, we don't care.
So what did you do?
I declined the Hawaii position.
Wait, time out. You said no to Hawaii and yes to Farmers Only.
I did.
.com.
I did, man. And here's the crazy thing on top of that. You know how sometimes you just never can tell where the universe is going to point you or why?
Right.
3 months after I accepted the job, I mean, I'm writing the telework policy. We are like getting press inquiries because we are blazing trails with this telework policy of mine. I created this division called turbocharged telework at the time. You can probably Google it.
Yeah, it's really you know, you Googled it before you came on. It's out there.
So 3 months into this new job, my son at the time was about 2.5. He started having some real problems. I get called all the time by his daycare and his teachers, and they were like, we don't know what's wrong. Something's happening. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like rocking in my career and all this. And boy, I never could have predicted that I would have needed the flexibilities that I was building and created the way that I did. I always say I would never have had the successful career that I would have had if not for telework and remote work. And I was building those programs, but I needed them too. I had no idea. And so I went on this really long journey as a single mom while I'm building these award-winning programs for the entire USDA, not just telework, all of them. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I help my littlest guy and balance being a single mom? I had a daughter, you know, she was only 4 years older than that, all pretty much on my own. So I just tell that story because it changed my life, and I know it changed the life of other people. And I was able to take that program that we built successfully. And it wasn't just me, it was all of our leadership team saying, I trust you. I want you to build these programs for us. And then we were able to deploy it and showcase it across government for other agencies to learn from and grow from and develop. So that's my story.
Wow. Mika, thank you.
Shout out to all the moms out there. Like, seriously, you basically just broke down, you know, touches my heart because it happened with me too, being single moms, you know, just making it happen. And this type of flexibility is a lot of people out there listening that can relate to what it is that you're saying. The flexibility allows them to be the parents that they want to be. So thank you. That was a great story.
Fantastic story. Mika, where can our listeners find you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn for sure. Sometimes Twitter, and I do have a little website. It's just mikacross.com if you want to learn more about what I do and who I partner with. And that's pretty much the best place.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It was really awesome to meet you.
Thank you.
It was such an honor and a pleasure. I can't even tell you how thrilled I am. We have 3 Mainas here, the Mainiacs, right? So you're gonna.
I know it.
Yes,
wicked awesome, Bob. Wicked awesome.
Wicked awesome, dude.
We're going fishing out in Portugal later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mika, we're definitely going to bring you back as a guest so that we can step up, you know, our Maine accent with our other guests and really go real hard, you know, and see if we can get some good chuckles out of it. So thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotelyone.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.